Good wine.
Good way to start the podcast.
I was doing it on purpose because I was waiting for that thing to go live and let everyone know what kind of a drink I'm drinking. Anyway, so yeah, we're here with another live stream for Hapa month, and we are happy to have the Lost Eurasians with us. We have Jay and Pill Eater.
Hi guys.
Hi guys. Hello, Hapa Supremacy viewers.
Yeah. So how are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay.
Just same old day, work, all that good stuff.
Yeah, work. Same with me. Just whatever.
Same with us. Oh my gosh.
I know,
it's
right?
like a weird coincidence.
We're all the same.
They're all
Maybe,
wage cucks.
maybe the bombs in the mail is an interesting story, but other than that, there's not much to say.
Yeah.
I've been trying to stay out of it because everyone pretty much wants to make their own conclusions when nothing has been figured out yet. So.
Yeah.
So, as our other live streams in this month have been going, we'll center this like around Asian or half Asian issues, and we're going to start with everyone's favorite question: what is your ethnic mix? For both of you.
Bill Eater?
I'm kind of a weird background because it usually comes from my mom, but it's actually Kazakhstanian and Japanese. But it's just something that was brought up in my upbringing where it was more at the times where it was like, oh, you have a little Japanese ancestry in you, and taking maybe Japanese in high school for the, I guess, cultural appropriation moment. But I would say it's more on the side of Kazakhstanian, where especially on my grandma's side, or at least on the, it's weird because it's like, you would think two things colliding together from a Central Asian place. It doesn't really qualify as Asian, but at the same time, if you live in kind of diverse land in America, somebody, or at least you feel special for having that degree. It's like someone saying, I'm a quarter Native American, but
Yeah.
to me, it's more like on my mom's side, and it's more apparent with the Japanese, but it was just something on my grandma, and it was just something of saying, oh, it's very interesting, the Japanese background. And when I went to college, obviously I was a sucker for Asian studies, and I still do like it. But again, I graduated about 1.5 years ago. So, but yeah, it remains important to what I do. So.
Is there anything specific in Asian studies that you're learning, or is it just
That you learned?
abroad?
This was back in Temple University. It was more, particularly when I took it, it was basically goofy things from Tokyo literature or to, Japanese, Chinese history, and then taking taking Japanese as your language class. And my Japanese is okay. It's just not that. It's not like I've been using it recently. It's only if there was my grandma, but my grandma passed away 1 year ago, so that makes it very. She was at 88, so. But at the same time, it became my minor instead, because I eventually graduated as English major, because again, if you're an Asian studies major, you have the possibility of falling under women's studies. So again, it's an arts degree, and I think the English, well, that does give you, and I did apply earlier this year on the JET program to go study in Japan, but at the current moment I was rejected, but I was thinking about doing it again, but I'm not so sure because I'm already having a position right now. And, but for going to grad school, yes, grad school is a huge possibility. I've already submitted to about a few different schools, and I'll probably start up that in 2019. So, but other than that, I've been doing this on the internet with Shark here, and everything's great, really. And I like what we're doing at the moment. So.
You know what's hilarious about you? Because you said you went to Temple University for Asian Studies. I almost went, I went to the orientation and everything, to Temple for Asian Studies, but then I made like a different choice in schools.
Was this 2011?
It would have been 2009.
Oh, okay. That I was still in high school. I went to orientation 2011, so. But there would have been a possibility, but I think you would have graduated earlier. So I was there from 2012 to 2014, 2 years until I transferred.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just interesting that you mentioned that, because I was like, I totally forgot that I had done that, but I changed my mind like last minute, basically. So.
Well, no, it's a great program. It's just that it's just a lot of. I couldn't do it because of the Chinese part. They wanted me to do a Chinese 101, and already I took almost 2 years to just do elementary Japanese and things like that. And eventually I had enough low credits to graduate from Villanova with an English degree, and I didn't want to spend 2 extra years on that. But the thing with the Asian Studies program, mind all the liberal parts of it. It's enjoyable because it sounds like a cliche. Like if you go for Black studies, obviously you go into Black Lives Matter or identity with, like, you know, Blacks. It seems like it's counterintuitive or something like that. But for the Asian studies environment, from what I understood, it was pretty much just upper middle class, you know, whites and Asians. And, you know, you had a person of color there, but they were nice. You know, I've only knew one Black. I wouldn't even say he's Black, but he was an Asian studies major, and I think everything was very harmonious compared to taking a legit English studies where everything was based around rampant, you know, feminism, political correctness. It seems like Asian studies was more of more people were open and honest to be liking things like from anime to Confucius. So it was more. That's why I liked about it, but. I don't know. That's just something I've, you know, people are better off in liberal studies, really.
Confucius say you must like anime.
Oh my gosh. So, Jay, what's your ethnic mix for everyone?
So my white side, it's mostly Anglo-Scottish, but then I also have a fraction of Slavic genes. And then my Asian side is Vietnamese.
So he's 1 in 1,024th.
Native American. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, probably something like that within French, because I am a descendant of William the Conqueror.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
I found that out from my grandma when she was doing a genealogy test. So it was pretty cool learning about that.
Have you guys done that 23andMe test yet?
I have not yet.
That was 2 years ago. And my friends wanted me to do it, and I just said no. But maybe it's just because I'm lazy. I don't want to spend money. But
it's pretty pricey.
Yeah, it is. And then the only thing that kind of creeps me out is, like, I heard that they like sell your information to like drug companies and stuff. So that kind of
we're gonna make the perfect drug just for you.
I'm pretty sure I might find a little bit of Chinese, but I don't think it's apparent. You know.
Probably some descendant of Genghis Khan, knowing his background.
Yeah, like I'm saying, it's going to be something weird, like Southeast Asian or some bizarre. But I don't know.
Yeah.
So how many languages can you guys speak?
Well, mostly English. I did take German in college, so I know some German.
僕は上手です。I don't want to. I just.
I was speaking German.
Ich will German. I really don't know much of my German at all. But yeah, just basic Japanese. But it's not that. It's really. I'm really slow at it, and it's just very. But it's nice that I can read it and get around places. But again, I'm not gonna go in a whole. I mean, if I was to do a live stream and do fluent Japanese, I don't think I could do it. So. It's just like that. Maybe it's just something I was born with, but I learned Japanese like everybody else does. You learn it from at the age of 18 and go up. So it's not like something innate in me.
Yeah, I studied Japanese for 8 years, and I was at elementary level. But then, like, I guess when you're an adult, then it's like, and you didn't go to Japan. Like, I didn't go to Japan. My brother ended up going to Japan, but. So I don't have like anyone to talk to in Japanese. So I just kind of lost. Like I can still read Japanese, but I can't really have a good conversation in Japanese anymore.
You can.
It was only my grandma, and I would just be confused. And my grandma would just. She was really old too, and she would speak it in this way where I would stumble with it. But when I started doing Japanese, she was already like 85, but she was liking, you know, but again, I just took it for granted, really.
What about you, Jay? Oh yeah, I think you already answered. Sorry.
Yeah, I speak some German. I took German in college, so it's and then I know some Vietnamese cuss words, but you know,
Of course, you gotta know the cuss words, right?
absolutely. So if you cuss in public, people won't notice what you're saying.
Except
well, maybe your diction might you know, if you say it real harsh, you know, they'll probably know. Oh, he's probably saying something bad about me.
Oh yeah.
So how did your parents meet? What's the story behind that?
Mine met in college.
Mine's interesting because, oh, sorry, what's that, Jay?
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying mine's different because it's more like my dad was in the military and my mom was working at the horse track races, and my dad was working as someone who would buy racehorses, and my mom was a groomer there, and they invested in horses, and eventually they used that money and started a Subway in like the 80s. And so it's kind of weird to think about this, but my parents, when they had me and my brother, they had a Subway until they sold it. And now my dad just does a night shift. My mom just stays at home, but it's pretty normal, I would say. In the business end, maybe, but I don't know. It's not that special.
So you're telling me that your dad was in the military? No.
Well, he was in the Navy. He was in the Navy, so it's more like. But he met my mom outside the Navy when my grandpa said, you know, he owned racehorses. This is on my dad's side, and said you should go to this place and we should invest in horse. And my mom happened to be a groomer there, so.
when you say Subway, do you mean
like the restaurant, the sandwich shop?
That's what I was gonna ask. I'm like, wait, like
not a Subway. No, it's a restaurant.
Actual Subway, yeah.
No, it's the restaurant because it was booming in the 80s and they made money off of it and they franchised a couple of it. They don't own any Subways now because they sold them all. So that's a little special info. I don't think I've ever said that online, but okay, there it is. So.
Oh. If we learn anything in this live stream, is that his parents used to own a Subway.
Yeah, Subway franchise.
Oh yeah. Got that $5 foot long.
I gotta admit, that's a pretty interesting story, though. I mean,
yeah.
The Subway that my parents used to own is still there, but it's run by a different family, and there's only the management is nice to my dad and my mom, but it's there's no discounts on it, so it's whatever. So it's just
I used to own this store. Give me a tip. Come on, man.
Well, yeah, they're good friends with the managers there because. But there's nothing other than special other than that because I don't. But again, I'm trying to mix this character because I don't think there's anything special about Eurasianism and Subway. I'm just saying.
That's a good quote. That's the best quote.
The sweet onion chicken teriyaki.
yeah, or the foot-long buffalo chicken.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm assuming then that so was it both of your moms are the ones who were Asian then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And they both were, they grew up in the United States?
No, my mom didn't. She was originally from Vietnam.
My mom grew up in New York.
Okay.
Oh, she's got that bronze tattoo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she talks about it. That's funny. But my grandma, she came in with, and my grandpa on I know it's family heritage. My grandpa on my mom's side, he died when I was 5, but he also was in the war, or I think not war. Sorry, military. He was in
World War I.
He was in the military, and I don't know if he was in any other. I don't know if he was in Korean War or anything like that. But his name was Walter, and Walter married my grandma, and then had my mom and my uncle, and my uncle died. It's weird, but the story is you could see, okay, maybe the military thing is I don't know why that's a cliche, but okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the one thing they always say whenever I was growing up, they would ask my dad, like, "Are you in the military?" And he's like, "For the last time, I'm not in the military."
You should have just joined us to be like, okay, there, and I'm in the military.
Yeah, I know, right?
Stop asking me.
I'm really surprised they would ask your dad that. Is it because I've met quite a few Hapas where their parents, like their dad met their mom in the military, but you know, I wasn't that case, surprisingly. But yeah, it's very common.
I could say that's true on my that's how my grandmother met my grandfather on my mom's side. So that's the only one thing you'd say. As for my own parents, not really. It's different.
So, for Jay's mom, did your mom immigrate like for work, or like how did she end up living in the United States?
It was because of the war.
Ah, okay. The refugee status?
Yep.
Ah, okay.
Citizen now, of course, but yeah. And then they met in college.
Right, baby,
sweetheart.
Get out.
How dare you?
Now, the thing about my grandma is that she has 2 other brothers and another sister, but the sister is in Japan, and I don't know anything about her. She's like Japanese, like whatever from whatever. But it's this kind of strange, like I really don't know about the other. I don't know if the other grandparents or distant uncles, I would call, are alive or dead, because if my grandma died at 88, they were probably older. So not sure if they're still living at 95 or anything.
The weird part, like sometimes about being half Asian living in the West, is like you have some relatives that, like, if you don't have like constant communication with your Asian side of your family, sometimes you have family like in another country that you've just, you know that they exist, but you haven't ever met them. So it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I have relatives in the Philippines that I've never met, but they know, like, we know of each other, but we've never met each other though, because I've never been to the Philippines. So,
well, there's something really interesting. I think I might say this now. Supposedly, on my my grandfather's brother, who was named, I believe it was like Kenneth Nally. If you Google search this, there was a Supreme Court case about Kenneth Nally Jr., I believe. Kenneth Nally Jr., my grandfather then, his brother, married a Vietnamese woman. And the son, you know, he's Eurasian. But there was a Supreme Court case that he went to the church and looked for the priest saying, what should I do? I have suicide and depression. How do I cure myself? And he was like, just believe in God. And then all of a sudden, Kenneth shot himself and committed suicide. He was 24 years old at the time. And then the dad, Kenneth Nally Sr., tried to sue the church, and it was a Supreme Court case. I'm about to look it up right now, and this was something weird in my family background. Yeah, you look up something, it says Nally says clergy assumed family before suicide. But if you look, I believe the New York Times, but this was something that happened in the 80s, really. And it's just something very weird in our family legacy. Oh yeah, Walter Nally. Okay, Walter Nally had Kenneth. Kenneth was Eurasian. He married Vietnamese. But here's a web article from kind of doxing myself here, but who cares? I already said. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at this one article on North Hollywood Patch or Los Angeles Times, says Walter Nally, that's literally my grandfather's brother, who passed away, filed famous clergy malpractice lawsuit over son suicide, died at 78. This was published in 2011, so this was about 7 years ago. I didn't even know this at the time, but my dad was talking about this, and he knew of Walter. But this is a strange case I want to bring up, because it seems like our Hapa is going to jump on it and say that, yeah, a Eurasian person who's socially confused would be like Elliot Rodgers. But you could say, in my family background, there has been this weird Elliot Rodgers case with Kenneth Nally, and there was this kind of, and it was into the Supreme Court that Walter sued the church for trying to be the wrong type of, you know, diagnosing them as the church. It's some weird case in that, but it's just weird because there's some case of Eurasianism in practice with politics right there in my family's history. So
You know
distant
that
family.
now, if our Happas is listening, because we know we have one hater who listens to every live stream. They're gonna take that, and now then you're gonna have like a hit piece tomorrow.
Well, no, it's quite a legacy. It's just something brought up with my name, my family's name of Nally, and it's just there. So I don't know if they ever used that before, but I just think it's an interesting piece because it just shows you that there's some Eurasianism in the family. And this has nothing to do with the Japanese side. It has to do with Walter, the Irish side of my grandpa's brother, who just separated. And now here's the weird part. Not Kenneth, but there was a sister who was Eurasian. I think it was Sarah Nally. And she had kids, and they're as old as me, and they're actually out in California where Shark is. But I remember friending them on Facebook, and they have they're definitely this type of Vietnamese Eurasian, but I just don't know any of them, really. But they're connected in the family, and my Uncle Mike has actually contacted them before, but I don't know. It's a weird situation. I can't really say everything, so.
That's really interesting. So exactly like why did they so he shot himself, right? Is that what happened?
The court case was like he was 24, he was depressed, he went to the church, which was like this weird Pentecostal church, said he was sad and depressed. The priest said, don't shoot yourself, or believe in God or whatnot or something.
Oh, okay.
And don't do it, but then he said something weird like, you'll go to hell if you do it or something. And then he shot himself the same day. And then Walter, the dad, came in and said, you gave my son bad advice. He should have went to a psychologist, not a religious institution. And I'm going to sue you for that. And then there was a Supreme Court case about whether is the religious environment more suitable for diagnosing people who are mentally ill or something like that. It's just a weird case, but the purpose I bring it up is because there is that weird, if you want to say, creepy Elliot Rodgers part in there. But I wouldn't say it's not that important. It's not like I'm suicidal or anything like that. I just think it's interesting.
I was gonna say, go get help, man.
No.
Go get some help.
So I'm not sure if I've asked this before, but have you both lived in the West your entire life, or have you lived in Asia?
Nope. Lived in the good old US of A all my life.
You're in California, right?
Yeah, I lived in the Northwest for a couple of years, and I miss it up there.
Are you in like a more Asian populated area now, or?
The part I live in, it's kind of like mixed. It's like Asian and white, and then you got the other minority population. It's common, but is probably like the third most populous is probably Middle Eastern, but it's mostly white and Asian.
Good. What do you call it? Environment for a Hapa.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, I've met quite a few Hapas. I mean, hell, I've played sports with a few of them, and they pretty much break the stereotype of how male Hapas are a bunch of tooth-picked arm or like skinny-looking draft incels that can't get a girl. They were pretty athletic, and they were pretty Chad, and I still keep in touch with them. They're good people.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
What? I don't
talking about
joke.
myself.
I find that more Eurasianism where I'm from either happens in Chinatown of Philadelphia, where I am. You might see that happening, but I've pretty much seen it more happen in Edgewater, New Jersey, which is right next to New York City. Sometimes my mom goes up there. It's more a mixture of Japanese, and that's why I used to go up there all the time. But for a bit, when I was 15, I was living in 6 months in Toronto, and there was a little community there that my family was associated with, but I can't really much say if those Toronto's Eurasian or not. I think Toronto's more of I don't know. Other than that, I wouldn't say. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of if you haven't been to Toronto recently. One of the friends that within my circle, he said Toronto's just full of pause and degeneracy.
Oh yeah,
let's just go with that.
I mean, yeah,
it's like Hollywood. It's very gross.
But you have to find that niche, and it's just like California. There's an Asian part of California where the niche happens, right? And the same could be said about NYC. It's in more of the Jersey part, not in there. And I think that's a reoccurring theme of how people, of backgrounds, especially Asian backgrounds, they go in these little private centers, right? And they're kind of secluded, but they're a little elitist at the same time.
Yeah, I was mentioning, like, I got into like a debate, I guess, on Twitter with a white nationalist.
What's new?
I know, right? And they pointed out that I kind of, I guess, self-segregate myself by living in an area where there's mostly whites and Asians. And I was like, that's kind of interesting because I didn't really think of it that way. But in Dallas, we kind of have that also because the northern part of Dallas is mostly Asians and whites. So I don't know if that means anything like that.
Well, I mean, it's natural. We tend to self-segregate. We tend to live in areas where the majority of the population of people tend to look like us. So in our case, we would live in, like, let's just say a neighborhood that's mostly white and Asian, and there's probably a Hapa population, like where I'm from. So it's pretty much preference. It's where you feel comfortable living.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say.
That makes sense to me because, especially with cultural values and stuff, you want to feel like you belong there, I guess. So
do you guys identify more with your Asian side or your white side?
For me, it's probably both. It's 50-50 split down. I mean, I got kind of like I've said on my live stream, I've got the best of both worlds, both with high IQ and high creativity from each side.
I would say both as well. But, at the same time, I'm not going to lie, but if you grow up in the American project, you're going to think yourself as this kind of American, and you're going to think of yourself as a white American. But eventually when people, find more heritage, whether that be the guy who listens to House of Pain and all of a sudden wants to be Irish American more than American, or he finds out he watches Sopranos and wants to be Italian American, right? It's very easy to say, oh, I must be Asian American if I have that. And that's kind of what I was growing up around. But in today's environment, if you want to have, a third position, or you want to find something greater, then you go with that crowd. It just becomes natural. It's even easy for someone who's Chinese American and understands where it's like, well, I want to be Chinese, but I'm more comfortable around English speaking Chinese. Whether if the project, like such movies like Crazy Rich Asians, was an attempt to get those Chinese in America or something like that united, I don't know. But I would say ultimately it's I grew up more as white, and I think of that in those terms. But again, maybe you'll see something different where Eurasianism will happen, and people are more going to say that, in the future. But again, the only time I've ever heard Eurasian not referring to Asians was Alexander Dugin when he refers to Russia. So I'm not so sure. It's hard to say Eurasian. Does that actually mean white and Northeast Asian when you could be? But again, I think it's a nice word, so I like it. So not going anywhere.
Did you guys see Crazy Rich Asians?
I did not.
I mentioned it to my girlfriend, but she could care less. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of a girl's movie, so I'm going to pass on it.
We saw it just to do the review on it, and it was okay.
Yeah. It wasn't the greatest Asian movie, as everyone kept saying it was.
It had a very Asian American vibe to it, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really surprised that they had to do a show like that. I don't know if they were going to make a political statement or not, because it's like, don't they have movies about Asian families in markets in China or Japan or Korea? But instead they do it in America, which is very surprising. I guess because you had the Black family TV shows like Family Matters, the Bill Cosby Show, they thought with Asians it'd be the same thing. But I think when I look at the previews and the reviews, it kind of sounded like it was pretty stereotypical, but at the same time it was trying to make these Asians more whitewashed or more westernized instead of just, because I've been around a lot of Asian families, and they're not like that. They're just themselves. It's like they don't act all materialistic or, you know, the way they dress or present themselves. They're pretty straightforward, and they just go on with their lives.
With a lot of Asian people in Asia, I've seen them be pretty, like in Thailand anyway, be pretty materialistic when it comes to that kind of thing. But like to me with that movie, it kind of seemed like they're trying to make some representation for Asian Americans, because I think Asian Americans also maybe like Hapas feel kind of displaced because they're not really fully accepted into Asian culture, but then they also kind of don't feel right in America because I guess because they feel like they're different. So in that,
it's like an identity crisis, yeah, because for some reason since they were born in a country that wasn't like their ancestral homeland, and the majority of the population aren't people that look like them. So it's like they kind of didn't fit in. They kind of felt isolated, but they tried to go to their ancestral homeland or to the motherland. It's at the same time, they also feel isolated there because, yeah, everyone there looks like them. But like when it comes to language and culture, it's even foreign to them.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think Eurasian's going to be its own thing. I mean, there's a difference between Asian in America versus Asian American. And when we usually refer to Asian American, most people have in their head someone who's Eurasian. But what it means to really today, when most people think Asian American, it just happens to be like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, or Southeast Asian in America, or something like that. Or a second generation where there's usually the renegade, you know, Chinese son or daughter who just speaks English and knows a little Chinese, and then ends up becoming a part of, you know, marrying someone, a white partner, something like that, or another Asian, and ends up creating this kind of Eurasian offspring. And I think when we talk Eurasian, it's like 3 steps ahead, right? So people can only think now and not in the future, right? But already in places like California and maybe New York, you're seeing Eurasianism happen quicker. And because it has already happened with Gen X having that offspring together, you know.
You see a lot of boomer couples down here the same way. And it's like, you sometimes wonder, it's like if this is their second wife or vice versa, or they actually did meet back in like the good old days, like in college or high school. That always comes in my mind because you see a common to a lot of white and Asian couples.
That also kind of like leads into my other question. There's been this article that's been circulating on the interwebs about Celeste Ning, or I don't know how to pronounce her last name. NG. How do you pronounce that?
Celeste?
Her last name is spelled NG. How do you? I think
Ing.
Ing. Okay. So she wrote an article because she's been being harassed, and she interviewed a bunch of different other Asian women who have been harassed online, predominantly about. So they're full Asian women, but they live in Western countries, and they're dating or marrying white men, and then they get basically harassed by our Hapas or people similar to that. So she kind of breaks it down as like how she's been harassed and how this is not racism and all this stuff. And it's been kind of a question that's been coming back up in the subreddits and also on Twitter and everything. Like when Asian women are demonized by Asian and Hapa men for dating white men, like, is that racism? You know, like
it's tribalistic, and every race does it. It's no different than when you see a black guy dating a white woman and black women get pissed off. You know, it's kind of that like that kind of they're getting defensive, they get jealous, or they get upset. Especially, you know, there's that meme where it's like this like big buff black guy that looks like he's an athlete, and he's dating like this like ugly white woman that's kind of, she's not even a Becky, she's kind of like overweight, and then like all these good looking black women, they get, you know, they get upset. Or what another common thing is too, it's like let's just say like a white person, like a white guy dates a Hispanic woman, and the Hispanic men aren't too happy about that either. So it's kind of like I mean, I kind of understand, it's like they're trying to look out for their own women, and or vice versa, and You know, they see it as like, are you sure you want to do this? But I think a lot of it's just human nature. It's just in our instincts when we get very tribal. I mean, I feel that's that way sometimes too when I see another Hapa like date an Asian. You know, it's like
I think it's more like that if you deal with biculturalism or two different types of people together. In a bicultural union, you have to deal with like a double-headed patriarchy, meaning that there's two male sides. You know, if white men are dating Asian women and Asian men are dating white women, obviously there's going to be two patriarchs fighting over, well, I think I want my side to be this background. So obviously the claim is if a white man dates an Asian woman, obviously he's going to put his white standards down and assume that the Asian woman should be white, you know, not like a third party, and there's no compromise. And the same could be said about an Asian man who dates white woman. Well, whoever's background, let's say Chinese, he's going to put down a Chinese patriarch over the white woman, right? But again, it's very strange because you see it's dueling. And what happens is that eventually what's going to happen is if, you know, you might see this tug of war action between like, well, you know, white's right or the Asian side's right or something. Eventually there's just someone to your Asian or your Asian male is just going to decide, well, both obviously, or both, or my side, where it's going to be its third position. And people don't really talk about the third position because it's just not developed yet. And people would rather, again, fight with two different men, you know, types of men, white man, Asian man, fighting over what's right. But in particular, why there's such hatred over white men is, again, I think it's just the anti-whiteness going around, you know, it's just anti-white male, really.
Yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to. That's what it seems like. Pretty much every grievance that someone seems to have when it comes to like people of color or like Asian issues or something nowadays, for some reason, it just turns into white male hatred. I don't know if that's like just like a trend, or I don't know.
A lot of it's from the media and the universities. It's all that brainwashing. It's that anti-white male hate, especially on the internet too, like on Tumblr. And it's just, you know, they kind of depict this white male as this evil colonizer, this evil alpha, like oppressor. You know, it's like that caricature of like they're like the ideal picture of an evil villain or a group of villains. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it I think has to do with jealousy. Yes, there are some things whites did do that a lot of countries and races did not do. You know, travel the world. They created the wheel. They a lot of the inventions that we see in our society, you know, and I think a lot of it, they claim that, you know, it's like, oh, you didn't make that, you know, or it's you stole from us and all this. But so it, like I said, it's very tribalistic, and it's very kind of like, oh, you know, you think you're better than us because you guys took a trip to the moon, you know, you guys created a space force. And
you know, it's weird. There's this one website by the name of Amped Asia. It kind of pretends itself as Vice magazine, but for Asian culture. But the irony is that it's just kind of a Playboy for beautiful Asian women, so people jerk off to. At the same time, ironically, they go with this SJW anti-white male politics, where if you go on their front page, it's like, how to get a white boyfriend, a guide for Asian women. It sounds pretty neutral. And then you read about it, it's just like this hate where they're trying to say, I hate Asian women because the Asian women, they lie, and then they choose white men. It's kind of like this Hapa incel argument. But it's very ironic because it's coming towards a website that objectifies Asian women as sexual objects. Yeah. And so there's some irony there, where they're trying to tell their audience, oh, don't look at the truth right now. Don't look, even though the truth may be obvious. We want you to believe that you're a fetishist, even though our entire market is based upon fetishizing.
Like,
and so
don't go to our website, even though you really want to whack off to us. Don't do it.
Yeah, and so
it's like real life anime.
Yeah, I know, right?
And so it breaks a limit. And so it's not only fuel for like an Hapa incel argument, but at the same time, it just feels to me that the people who virtue signal are the people that know things are true, right? The most like explicitly white, stuff white people like person who does everything white, from wearing plaid t-shirts to watching Conan O'Brien and Pumpkin Latte. They're the type of people that are going to be anti-white and say, oh, I hate white people because you yourself are white, you know, or that you feel guilty for being explicitly about that, you know. And I think the same could be said about someone who is, I would even say maybe some self-hating Eurasian out there, or at least some type of Asian woman who feels, you know, she feels guilty because she likes white men, you know, and or something like that. Or she feels, but I noticed that. And it's this kind of thing where people feel guilty when they don't want to admit the truth, but they want to have this fantasy around it. And I think that just causes more problems than it was. And if people were just authentic, things would be better. But, you know.
So do you think Hapas and Asian men, and I guess just in general, our Hapa subreddit, do you think they have legitimate grievances towards what they talk about? Or do you think there's nothing there?
You know, I actually still read it, even though I don't like to talk about them, because I've talked to some of the people before, and I always find what they say is interesting. At first, I used to think they're just normie SJWs, period. That's all they were. But now I'm really starting to believe they belong to the incel category. If you look into like incel stuff, like incel Wikipedia, I think that our Hapa is more like Asian incels. It's not anti-white male anymore. I think they've changed their message completely. If you're an Asian incel, you belong to our Hapa. And what the incels argue is basically not only this hatred for like modern society, but just hatred of their own self. And then they project it onto others, you know? And so really it's just understanding like incel culture. And I think our Hapa has nothing to do with the Asian male condition. That's just some kind of, that's just a method to get their crocodile tears from. I don't even think it has to do anything with that. It really just means it's just a group of losers or suicidal, again, incels who just dislike things, and they just want to point out these bad things about the world, but they don't do anything about it. They just, I mean, again, I won't lie. I've been reading like Incel Inside Wikipedia, there is some wisdom that's very, like if you look on the Incel Wiki right now and just read some of the articles, there is some wisdom, but the wisdom is very like self-hating and putting yourself down as a loser. And again, that really goes against the whole like manosphere thing about, or taking the red pill. It's like almost the opposite. It's like they've taken this big black pill about all subjects. And again, I think that, again, incels don't solve the issues. Incels are just nihilists and they just die. And I think it's safe to say that our Hapa is just Asian incel thread now.
And you got to add too is that a lot of these people too, they hate their white dad, and that's what it sounds like too on some of their posts. They for some reason cannot bond with their white father, and then they start hating white people and say how the reason why their white dad married their Asian mother was to reinforce their white supremacy, which makes absolutely no sense at all. I don't know a single white supremacist who says to themselves, "Oh, I need to marry myself an Asian woman and procreate with her to reinforce my white supremacy." It's a very ridiculous statement. I mean, I'm pretty sure if they felt whites were supreme or a white nationalist, the white nationalist would marry another white person and have a lot of white children, not, you know, going after the Asian women. And they say it's like colonization. They're anti-colonization because apparently the whites they colonized, and apparently them marrying that Asian woman's colonization, which is also really stupid to say because I'm pretty sure the first thing in their minds wasn't, oh, I want to colonize this Asian woman. So, and like Pillier said, they're upset because no girl wants to talk to them. And most of them are probably like Elliot Rodger. They wanted to date a white girl, but the white girls wouldn't date them and you know, they say, oh, it's their fault, you know. It's just like, you know, it's white men's fault. And
they say JBW, just be white. That's an incel term, and that term was made up on incel, and now the Hapa Reddit's using it. So it's easy to say that they're incels, self-identified incels.
Right, and then you gotta and these people like Elliot Rodger and them, they think that if you just wear a nice designer shirt, nice glasses, and wear some cologne, like the women will be going all over you. It's like, no, you gotta take care of yourself. And a lot of us know that too. I mean, look at famous hoppers like a Dean Cain or a Paul Correa, a Ron Darling. It's they're athletic. They always work out. They take good care of their bodies. You know, they eat right. They have a healthy lifestyle. They work on their communication skills, so they have that charisma. It's just, you know, it's more than just, you know, looking the part. You got to, and even then, it's one, you know, if you don't really have a, you know, for a lot of cases, if you don't look like you take care of yourself, you know, women just don't. They could see it that sometimes as a signal as like, well, he obviously isn't committed to a lot of things, and he isn't committed to taking care of his own self. What makes me think he's going to be committed to taking care of me?
Yeah, it sounds pretty sexist when you think that woman just cares about what you wear and what you smell like.
I know, right? And like a lot of these things don't even seem, I don't know, like related to Asian issues in general. They just seem like normal guy things that you should know if you're a guy.
Oh my God, you're wearing Tommy Hilfiger cologne. Oh, now I want to fuck you. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, apparently they're afraid to go to the gym. It's like, go to the gym, work out, gain more muscle, you know, get buffer, you know, get some, you know, I go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week. I take, you know, take good care of myself. I eat really healthy, and you know, I always try to, instead of always thinking about girls too, I always have different hobbies, or I think about other things. I keep myself occupied all the time. It's life doesn't rely around women. And, you know, for me, hey, I would love to find myself a really nice Hapa or some Quappa girl, you know, that would be a dream come true. But, you know, I'm just not in a hurry yet. And, you know, right now I'm just focusing on other things and finding a girl. You know, it's maybe I want to go into a trade. You know, I've been thinking about that, going into a trade and work a higher pay, so I could work a better paying job. Or maybe, I don't know. And like, I thought about, you know, I've been coming up with new ideas on the Lost Eurasians channel, like more ideas Pilliter and I could come up with, like whether it's, you know, the type of guests we bring or different topics. You know, there's always other things in my mind that keep me distracted from always thinking about women or finding myself a waifu.
See, I think that in general, that attitude is what normally ends up getting you the girl, because if you're not so focused on it and you're focused on improving yourself, then that's what women are looking for. Yeah,
because I think if you're focusing on just a girl, that's kind of stalkerish.
Yeah, it's very creepy, and that's really going to turn them off even more.
You know, I'm just looking at Incel Inside Wiki, and I just found Rice Cell, which basically refers to an Asian incel. And it just says right here, Eurasian Tiger, R. Happas, Elliot Rodgers, Seong Hung, and there's a whole article about it. And so I guess it's safe to say right now that even the Incel Wiki calls it a quote-unquote community of self-hating incels, even on the incel page. So I guess I'm right on. So it's not, again, it's not to say that these people are SJW normies. These people have legitimate problems, and they're just a part of the big phenomenon, which is incel. It just happens to be the Asian incels. So the rice cells, I should say.
Well, that makes more sense now. Like if you put them in that category, then everything kind of falls together.
Well, I was going to say with rice, I was thinking that, oh, they don't like rice?
Oh, come on.
Oh, I was looking up the Chad terms too, and the Asian Chad is called Chang with the Wang.
Oh my God. What the hell?
That, wow.
Coming up with some racial slurs there.
I don't know if there's anything else about it, but it's supposedly on the Chad article, it's Tyrone is black and Chang with the Wang.
I've heard the Tyrone one, but
Tyrone's black Chad.
Tyrone Wiggums.
And Rico would be Spanish or Hispanic, but there's not anything. I'm looking it up right now, and there's
how fucking dare you.
Chang Thunderwang. It says Chang is a polar opposite of his fellow countrymen, the rice cell. The most notable Chang in history was probably Genghis Khan.
Well, that is true. Didn't he have like hundreds of concubines and
yep.
have like
he was a player.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he was the
He
ruler.
got himself those ladies.
Yeah, I read like this history thing about he had like sex with a different woman every single night or something.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That sounds like a boxer name. Like it would be like the next Rocky villain, Chang Thunderwang or some shit.
I'm actually trying. No, I found a. Okay, it says Chads all over the world. I'm Google searching it right now, and the picture, the Chad Chang Thunderwang seems to be. I don't know what to describe him. If I could post the picture somewhere, it seems to be. He has a green shirt. He has a calculator. Has his black
Of course, he
hair,
has a calculator.
Oh,
and but he's
jeez.
like Chad. It's just but he has a.
Surprised
And
he
it
got like a
says-
black belt.
It's Chad Thundercock, Tyrone Titan Dick, Chang Longwang. It's just funny. It's just funny, and it makes sense, and I like it.
That's
Actually,
great.
it's kind of funny because it just disturbs, the whole
Yeah.
cell. So
You know, when someone, it was like way back in the day, meaning like a year and a half ago. But
Yeah, well,
on Twitter,
where
someone,
we're living now, it feels like it.
I know, right? Someone from our Hapas was like attacking me, and they used that term. They said Chang Thunderwang, and I just laughed because I was like, "What are they talking about?" But I guess it's like an actual.
yeah, it's Asian Chad.
Okay.
It just means Asian Chad opposite to rice cell, from what I'm understanding right now.
These are all these new vocabulary that I need to learn.
Yeah, they're pretty innovative with their names.
It sounds like a parody.
Yeah, it does.
So, okay, this is like a very serious question going from from that. But so what is your guys' opinion on how Asian women I guess in the West mostly, maybe in Asia too, but they tend to marry outside of their race, or at least it seems like a lot of them are more willing to end up dating or marrying someone outside their race.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with I see it from two things. Either they want to be more American, more Western, or more white, or because, it's like if you talk to some Asian women, they will say that. They'll say like, well, Asian men tend to be more effeminate or introverted, and or they tend to be stoic, and they see white men as like that more like romantic kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's how I think, in my opinion, why so many of them would date outside of their race, more specifically whites.
I think it's more like the Asians who are explicit about dating outside the race. They just say, and we're talking about like, someone who's Southeast Asian or just any Asian who's just like, well, I want to date outside my race. Well, I think it usually has to do with like it's not like it's American. It's more like we're talking about like from Asia, where it's like it's their environment. Like if you're from like a country which is like you don't have any future or hope, the best thing to do is play gives me that in America, really, or get your green card, as they say. And I think the same is to say it is a part of the westernized ideal of just being at the top, right? In Confucianism, you want to be the top, want to be the best. And if there's something, if the ideal is that, white Americans are the power structure, as much as you probably have heard this before so many times, well, it's just so easy to believe that. And then if you want to be a part of that structure, I think it's easy to say that I think Asians who want to pursue that and marry that just want this kind of, I said it was like this weird Asian Aryanism happening where it's just like, all right, they'll have this Eurasian offspring, but it'll be both white and Asian, and it'll be the new master Uber race, as you describe it. But I think as well, again, it has it's a lot to do with not only, the country, economy, environment, but as well, I would think culture as well. And I think that especially in Japan's environment, where if you look at the Japanese, it's, they can't even have a proper military anymore, and all their trade is with America. It's weird that Japan runs things culturally speaking, not economically. And I strongly believe, and I've always had this belief, where the reason why they're not having as much kids as they are as Japan is not only that it's just an older, class of older men running things, but all the young women are being taken away by foreign men. I really do believe that, and it has something to do with, it's not supremacy or at all, but it's done with this aristocratic, may the best man win in this weird social Darwinian scheme. But it turns out it's just a part of this weird Japan Eurasianism that's might happen in the future. And that's basically some of the elite, or at least in literature from William Gibson's Neuromancer, to pretty much the everyday video gamer who's obsessed with anime, has definitely a fascination with anime, which just translates to the Japanese woman. I think there's definitely some aristocratic Eurasianism going on, but at the same time, that's going to be dealt with the Japanese not having enough children, and it just kind of like a rainforest out in South America. It'll probably be all chopped down before, you know, the Japanese men will go full on Yukio Mishima and get their women back. But until then, things are very strange. It has to do with a lot with the cosmopolitan or globalist world taking resources. And I think probably an assertion of, you know, nationalist pride, or at least understanding that if you do pursue someone outside your race, you should have all responsibility of having a destiny with that person and have institutions to build that up. Otherwise, the other side will not want you and call you some traitor. But I just find that those are the things which are kind of happening right now, and it's probably going to be a big issue in the next like 20 years or so.
So do you think, like, based on what you just said, do you think a lot of people will start going back to resisting race mixing and trying to get people to not race mix?
Hashtag resist.
Well, like, we've actually seen that currently. I don't know if you've seen that currently, Pill Later, but like I've noticed that most recently, the past few years.
Yeah, that's been, and I think there's been nationalist kind of uprising, not only in Europe, but, you know, even with Donald Trump. If Donald Trump literally just said 2 nights ago in Houston, Texas, "Oh, I'm a nationalist,"
yeah,
he doesn't even care what that means. You know, he called Antifa alt-left, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he just says legitly, "I'm a nationalist," then that just shows you that I think in a normative sense, there will grow, nationalism will become one of the most counter anti-liberal movements, and it's going to be something interesting to invest in. I've been certainly, I mean, I was invested in nationalism too in college, and I wrote my senior project on it. And so it's just going to be something that's more focused on, right? It's just the silly part is if you're a liberal and you deny this and you call them evil, bad Nazis, right? And they're just evil people, you know. Are you going to vote Democrat or are you going to vote Nazi this election season, right?
Yeah.
And no, we have to look at it in a different way, where it's not just whites that are becoming nationalists, you know, in Europe and America, whether that's civic nationalists or just racial nationalists. You have to look at it as well as the outside world and the non-white world as well. And that refers to if Japan is going to become nationalist again, or what's going to happen when North Korea opens up to American tourism. Is North Korea going to try to fight a culture war with Japan, right? Or is North and South ever going to compromise again and create a giant Korean state? No, I think the nationalism with Koreans are so strong that I believe there's been this kind of trying to American compromise with Korean culture and popular culture and things like that, but it's very hard. I think Korean culture is very resistant. I'm starting to believe like Japanese have been very submissive, right? And Koreans are more resistant and more militant, right? And the Chinese could care less. They just do their trade and whatnot. And so I think there's going to be a lot of culture clashing in the next few decades or so. But I would say in the next 10 years, nationalism will definitely be an issue that maybe when I'm 50 years old, we'll have a president that will legitimately say he's a new democratic nationalist socialist, kind of like Bernie Sanders mixed with Donald Trump, you know?
So, but when you speak about nationalism, though, in America, since we're kind of, I guess, a multicultural nation, when we're talking about nationalism, I would think that they're talking about civic nationalism, you know, like Americans, like regardless of your race. So I don't know. I think that's why a lot of like leftists who are, I guess, non-whites feel threatened. Like I can understand it, because if they're thinking of it in terms of race and like white nationalism and things like that, then it makes sense. But if we're talking about civic nationalism and culture, then it is a little different because no matter your race, if you grew up in the U.S., you have some sort of American culture in you.
Well, I think that's what Donald Trump meant. And when a lot of people, too, on the right mean, when they mean nationalism, it's mostly civic nationalism. So anyone who was born and raised in America and are American citizens. I know, of course, the left sees it as well, white nationalist because, well, America technically is still a majority white country. And technically, you could argue, too, that the founding fathers were. I mean, it's like, it's no big deal. You know, as someone who studied American history in college, and you learn about the Naturalization Act of 1790, which is explicitly said that any free white person of good moral character can become a citizen, and it only applied to them. So I guess the left was studying the 1790 Naturalization Act. Of course, that changed with the Immigration Act of 1965 when they literally just opened the borders. But yeah, most boomers and kind of like alt-light kind of guys, they're like when they say nationalist, it's civic nationalism.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's as much as there is the divide between racial nats and civic nats talking about, you know, the divide between what's the better nationalism. I think the point is that, you know, if you have the Proud Boys fighting like 2 days, a week ago against Antifa, and where you have both a spiritual divide, you know, it doesn't matter. The point is that it's a form of like anti-liberalism. And that's really, and liberalism has pretty much been the dominant Western, you know, power structure. And really, if that's going to change for the future for some better future society, that's what's really is happening is a fight between that. And I can only see it further extending when you'll have the most explicit, whether that's like this post Richard Spencer white nationalism or something like that. I don't know what's going to be more happen, but I could say that things are becoming more radical, and definitely people are going to be unapologetic about it, eventually getting to positions of power, whether that means academia or actually running for office. I could see it either way.
Yeah, and like the midterms are coming up, and you know, I've been mentioning this on Twitter, but I'm getting a little nervous because the day after the midterms, we're going to be flying into Chicago so we can drive to Indianapolis to see his parents, or Shane's parents. But yeah, if the Democrats don't get enough seats, then, you know, they're going to probably riot in the streets. You know, it's going to be almost like 2016, or at least that's what I'm expecting.
Just imagine if you want
yeah, just like so if you're in Chicago, just be sure you get an armored vehicle. Make sure an Uber has an armored vehicle that could take you to Indy or something, or a bus that could take you in an armored bus that could take you to Indianapolis.
I know we planned this out so well right after the midterms, and when I don't think the Democrats are going to win enough seats, so it's probably going to be bad.
I also think too that I think there's going to be also in academia, as much as we hear, whether you're watching the latest Ben Shapiro or some kind of SJW on campus, you know, stuff happening, I really believe that all of this stuff is going to like backlash, and then the new generation, whether that's Z or kind of late millennials who get into college, are going to be incredibly anti-SJW. And I have this feeling that we're going to see more often people who attend college and deliberately agitate their professors, who are either doing it, they're just saying like SJW ideology just because they sincerely believe it, or I think most of the time they're just doing it because it's their job. And I think there's going to be more of that, again, backlash. And that makes me hopeful, and I think it's going to happen definitely in academia. I mean, a lot of people don't have hope for academia as if it's a big, you know, money scam. But I think what's going to happen first is after all this cultural stuff is happening, you might see this war happening in academia in the next 10 years. It might not seem now because things look dire, but I think something might change, and I'm just hopeful for the future on that.
I think you're right about that because, I mean, especially with the amount of money that you have to pay for college, and then like the worth that some of these degrees are, you know, something's going to collapse.
Well, what happens if there's someone who gets a women's studies degree, like, and then goes for their master's in women's studies and realize that they're going to be stuck in academia? And what if they become like alt-right or something, and then they start advocating like trad mom ideology? And I'm just saying. And so like this could be for the artist. Yeah,
it's going to be tough for them. It'll be a challenge because, you know, like it was just one person versus the whole entire faculty. Like they would get pretty much.
But we're already doing this on the internet. We're already doing this on the internet in a small, and it's just going to turn out in real life. And so if you have someone who does get like a bachelor's in English, right, and then can't get any work because all the jobs are by older people, and so they're just going to have to stay in academia, either borrowing debt or getting their master's or even going all the way a PhD, and they still have these beliefs, and eventually that will just, the job or the work of working for academia will soon change or mold to the individual working it. Or eventually the bosses die and new bosses get replaces who are basically alt-right or red-pilled or anything like that. And I could definitely see that happening, so as long as the right people stay in academia. That's all really what it matters.
All right, so we're gonna shift gears and ask you some more lighthearted questions. We're gonna ask you a couple of them. So the first one is, what's your guys' favorite Asian food?
I
know it's very hard.
Bubble tea. I don't want to say bubble tea.
No, that's good. That's very good.
I do like bubble tea though, because there's a bubble tea place right next that just came in, and whenever I bike, sometimes when I want to spend $10 on something useless, I will buy the bubble tea. Yeah, it's really good bubble tea. Well, bubble tea with, if you want candy with it, but it's like, yeah, it's expensive. But whatever, it's good.
I could go for some mean Korean barbecue. I'm like a huge fan.
Oh man, now I'm hungry.
Oh boy. There's a Korean barbecue place in Philadelphia. I think it was, I went there last year and they have the what's it called when the sunny side up egg is in the sunny side up, I don't know
what you're talking about. What is it?
It's the sunny side up egg in the sandwich they mix the beef in. Mike, I don't know. I just, Korean to me is just like foreign already, and I look at it and I see some looks, it's not Japanese, but it's Korean, and sometimes it's like I do like it. It's interesting.
Do you mean like the sunny side up egg, and then there's like a bunch of side dishes and bulgogi and rice?
Yes, that's it.
That's called bibimbap.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I do like that.
I love that. One of my favorite meals.
It's a bowl. I'm trying to find it. It's Korean bowl. In it was there's a Korean mall or something, and it's just like, it's weird because in Chinatown there's just one Korean place, and all the Koreans go there, and it's kind of like a secluded fortress. But in there they have their karaoke, the nightclub, the barbecue, and it's just like, that's where you go to get it. And other than that, the Japanese in Philadelphia are outside at the Shofusa Garden or something, and so everyone has their own like fortress. But yeah, that's my only place where I can. But other than that, I was thinking of I had how was it? I'm trying to think. Maybe I like wagyu beef, like some kind of Japanese steak. So I'm just trying to remember.
Wagyu beef is like expensive.
Have a wagyu burger patty? It's delicious.
It was a type of wagyu. I'm just trying to remember what it was. And it was at a dinner last, and it was just really good. Maybe, but other than that, yeah, it probably falls under there. Maybe, I'm trying to think. No,
You're
I think
in
that's good.
Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
Because I used to, well, I lived in Harrisburg before, but so I used to go down to Philadelphia for like that kind of stuff. Have you been to? There's this really, really good Chinese restaurant. Hey, you haven't been there, okay? Oh. There's a really good Chinese restaurant, and it's kind of hidden. It's like in the basement of another restaurant. It's called New Big Wong.
Oh, how dare you!
New Big Wong.
You should go there if you haven't been there.
Well, odd enough that in Philadelphia, there's this one place called Li Hao Fook, and Countercurrents, the white nationalists, would meet out Li Hao Fook in Philadelphia, including Greg Johnson, and I was always invited. Yeah, and the white nationalists would meet at Li Hao Fook, and they've usually come
Why
there
are
twice.
white nationalists meeting at a Chinese restaurant?
Well,
Get
they
out
see East Asians as honorary Aryans, so
That's the
they
funny
see
part.
them. Yeah,
The funny part is Greg Johnson says you wouldn't expect a group of white nationalists meeting at a Chinese restaurant, and it's perfect because Antifa wouldn't know either. And it's just, yeah, it's
a lot
probably
of them do respect Japan, and they would never want to see Japan like get invaded or turn into a third world country. They would like if there was a white ethno state, they would protect Japan.
It's so weird how they would consider like most Asians as honorary whites or something. I don't know, but
Well, because both European and Asian societies tend to be the most advanced and modern societies in the world. They tend to be the nicest or the most richest and even kind of the most innovative societies. Like you go to Japan or, you know, Korea, even Hong Kong, and you see like how modernized, you know, it is over there. And it's very similar to what you see in Europe. Or in the US or Australia. It's that it's that history of that innovation and that creativity and that drive.
yeah, it kind of feeds into that whole like, I guess, rumor. I'm not sure if it's a rumor, if it's real, but like white nationalists having yellow fever.
How dare you?
No, I've heard that a lot.
It's more like I wouldn't say I would say it's like a joke, because it's like if you love traditionalism and you love purity, eventually if you're fighting against pauseness in your own society, like if you're fighting for like, because in white nationalism, the topic is always other normie whites. You have to wake them up. It's only natural to go to other non-whites who are more aware and that. So eventually they would be interested in that. But the irony is that, well, if you're a white nationalist, you can only be for your own people. So eventually you will see this kind of clash. It's just that the clash, it's very interchangeable, but it's not, it's just hard for white nats to be like open about it. It's like, it's hard. The only type of people I've ever had problems with was the anime right, because the anime right literally said they were national socialists who liked anime. But it's like, but you guys like anime women over white women, so like why are you I've had to get in a fight with such of them, and this was a big issue last year.
Don't even like real women.
Yeah, they don't.
That's number one. Like
they like a variant of Japanese women that are fictional, but it's just like, how can you be white knack if you can't even? I just feel like it was just shock progressivism, and it's just like that would be my only concern. And people like the anime group is they don't make sense, and maybe they're incels. I think they are incels, or at least a bunch of trolls who don't know what they're doing. So, but yeah, that was the only time I felt like offended by the nature of it. So,
most white man, I can't talk.
Oh, really?
Sorry, wait. Most white nationalists who I come across, mostly on Twitter or other parts online.
Not in real life.
Usually, yeah. I mean, like, who's gonna say like I'm a white nationalist like in real life? Anyway.
yeah.
So they usually say stuff like that you're like Asians are okay though. But I did come across one who told me, well, someone told me to go back to Asia. I'm like, but I've never lived in Asia.
Go back to Asia, you harlot.
I think that's just them being funny. It's because, well, you know, whites, they always get, you know, from non-whites, especially from Hispanic, like supremacists or black supremacists, they'll say like, go back to Europe kind of thing. So it's kind of like, oh, you know, we're going to, you know, be ironic and say, well, go back to Asia, or, you know,
Well,
go back
to. Was totally serious, because I was like, are you serious? Because I've never lived in the Philippines or China, because like those are the two like ethnicities that are in my Asian side, and they're like, well, you know, you just be happier if you lived in Asia. I'm like, are you gonna pay for my plane ticket? Because then
Go
I'll
back
go.
to Asia, Bruce Lee. Get out of here. We don't want you here.
I must be the only person that doesn't have a problem talking to them. It's so weird. I don't know. I get along with a good number of them. I've had a few of them come on our live stream. They're good people.
It's easier to talk to than like anyone on the left. Like, we've asked tons of people who are on the left to be on our live stream, and all of them are like, no, we don't want to have anything to do with. Yeah, I have.
Oh, you have. Okay.
Maybe just me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Yeah, either they find out what our channel is and they're like, yeah, it says supremacy in it, so we can't.
Supremacy. Get the hell out of my face, bitch.
Yeah, and then I asked other people who, like, they'll agree initially and they'll be like, you know what, I can't do it anymore. Or people just don't answer.
I'm quote unquote busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the only like real white supremacist you'll ever meet is Greg Johnson of Countercurrents because he's unapologetic about it through philosophy and like commentary. But it's like, again, if you like the people who are like actual white nats or 1488ers, again, I've said this before, they're just like kids out in the Midwest who are just like working at a 7-Eleven and just like they don't see anything else in the future and they just say negative. It's like almost the mix between trolling and like this kind of, it's not incel, but it's more like this angry, insecure kind of ideal of it's just like if you're not on the same page for race war now or ethno-nationalism, then you should be sent to the gas chamber, which is completely like immature. And again, someone who has to be behind a computer screen and has nothing else to be doing can't sincerely believe that, right? And the most sincere people who believe that are like the Countercurrents, like High Hub, really, the High Institute. And it's just like, it's a small group of people, but again, it attracts so much people to the transgressive nature of it, you know, than actually doing something, you know, practical.
Have you guys interviewed any like full-on white nationalists on your channel?
Yeah, we have actually. We have a couple. So how many did we have?
I mean, Southern Dingo would be explicit.
Yeah, and then Big Cat Kayla too, I think. And
well, during my time at Stark Truth, of course I've had Greg Johnson and some others as well as Gulam Dorish, but they're not like radical. It's not like they're Andrew. Like again, I would think Southern Dingo would be more like the type who's. But the people that I like are more like race realists, or they're more on the side of human biodiversity. Or, I mean, the white advocates again would be like Greg Johnson or like Gulam Dorasher or Vincent Law or some of the old like or Richard Spencer, like those characters. It's not like it's an alt-right thing. It's not like an explicit, you know, race war Andrew Anglin thing, you know. But again, I guess there is that crowd because people find that popular or very transgressive, you know.
It would be interesting because, like, we try to interview anyone who wants to come on the channel. And I know, like, people get bad reps for interviewing people. It's like, oh, I want to talk to you. Even if we disagree, I want to talk to you. And then you get associated with them forever. But it would be interesting to interview a white nationalist and just to see what they think about race mixing because
you should just
validate our identity of.
You should definitely get Greg Johnson because I think Greg Johnson, he was on Roaming Millennial, and Roaming Millennial had Greg Johnson on with that guy T, and Roaming Millennial tried to stump Greg Johnson, but I think if I remembered correctly, Greg Johnson said in a race mixing society there would just be amnesty. And that it wouldn't matter if you're quarter Asian because in the white society you would be considered a new white person or something really funny. And I think Greg Johnson also flattered Roaming Millennial by saying she was very pretty and beautiful and will be taken first. This is 2 years ago.
That's the thing though, because Roaming Millennial is really pretty. So it's like, how can you disagree with her? Because, you know, like if you're a white nationalist, you'd be like, well, she's half white though, so that counts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Johnson's position, so I don't know. Yeah, you might want to consider in that, say, because from the way I look about it is that right now it's really a divide between if you're a white advocate, a white nationalist, or just kind of a race realist, really. I look at those two categories. Otherwise, you could follow Richard Spencer's weird ideal of white man Zionism, ethno-nationalism, or just Andrew Anglin 1488er, but I think it's really divided right now, and things again, I think the alt-right is dead at the moment, and it's just what happened. What happened is it got segregated again, and it's all over the place. And who you interview, it's like, what are you talking? Is it more like you want to get someone who's a white advocate, a white nationalist, supremacist, if you want to use that word, or someone who believes in ethno-nationalism or human biodiversity? And to be honest, I am the type of person, as an alternative to liberalism, I believe there will be some kind of not postmodern, but a type of human biodiversity form of nationalism where people will, whether that's civic or racial, people will, through technology, whether that's like Discord or YouTube or the internet, technology will help create nationalism quicker because we'll have our own forms in IRL. And not only will be associating with like people that are like ourselves, but like people who agree on our same opinions, and we'll literally have the echo chambers in real life. And I think in a way that would actually create more peace than it would conflict, but it would just be like people creating their own societies. And I strongly think as the alternative to liberalism, the individual, people will think more communally with, I guess, the nature of reality, and people will be more accordance to family. And I think family will be creating, it's kind of like a post-libertarian ideal, really, but more in tone with, again, this nationalism. It's just thinking libertarianism in tone with technology, whether that's bad or good, whether the Discord, cyberpunk reality will become true. It's just a bigger issue that's going to be, talked about, or at least argued about. Well, eventually Facebook will overcome our lives, and being in Facebook groups will become a form of nationalism, a form of imagined communities. But it seems the way that will be the kind of the reaction against liberalism and creating autonomous states, whether that's in technology or by people like ourselves,
I think that's why, like, people are like, when people think of libertarianism, they either think it's like a weak concept, or they think of like it's too ideal or something like that. But I feel like if libertarianism or like anarcho-capitalism were to be like the main philosophy that people operated by, then it would end up that way anyway. So in a way, it would end up more extreme than if it would be how it are now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
people would just segregate how they want to.
Yeah, and that's like a form of like post-libertarian / naturalism, or if you think like the Jetsons, really, like if you think in the Jetsons, they lived in these towers and flying cars, and at the top of these towers are like the futuristic WASP white people, future people, right at the top, and we never know what's at the bottom in the Jetsons. It's just like, were all the resources used up, or is there's a seething mass of Brazilian brown people at the bottom, right? And that's, again, a form of, if you just take a look at the country of Brazil, in their recent election, if people are eventually like kind of like a German, a petri dish, they will find ways to segregate themselves in a way where how can like the world, the earth will move on and humanity gets the cosmos while we kind of get in tone and still save resources with the earth, right? It's not like plastic, a man-made material, is going to morph into the earth and create like plastic trees. No, the plastic will just be put to the side and life will keep growing. And I think that's exactly what the nationalist or human biodiversity argument is. It's pretty much multiculturalism and diversity leads to conflict, but those societies which can work it out, whether it is the bicultural people, or we're talking Eurasian or some kind of form of biculturalism here and there, those societies can work, and people will be better working together as a group while everyone has a self-determined state. And and that's kind of an interesting aspect of how supposedly the European Union was supposed to work, but ended up becoming a cosmopolitan, gang, that hurts on other people. But again, I feel like people will find which ways, but it'll definitely will be a future without liberalism. So,
all right. So, last question, and it's gonna be the hardest question. So do you prefer cake or pie?
Oh boy, to be honest, I prefer cake. I guess that's just me. The reason why I prefer cake is I don't know if you guys have ever had a cake batter ice cream or a birthday cake flavor ice cream. It's really good, and I just like the authentic cake. More specifically, like a good old fashioned looking birthday cake. You know, it's just there's just something about it. It's not the way it tastes too, but like the way it's presented.
I like cake too, unless this is some joke I'm not getting. But yeah, I don't know about pie, but maybe I like pie too. But I guess cake's good as well. Yeah, birthday cake ice cream's great too. I don't have a problem with it. So
I agree. Well, actually, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of split between cake or pie, but oh, okay. So wait, sorry. There's one last question. Even though you said that that's the last question, but we asked this question for every live stream now. Would you guys be okay with pineapple on pizza?
that's really funny because my girlfriend is obsessed with pineapples, and so she goes to college for hospitality, and she's in hotel management, and supposedly she was told that pineapples are the symbol of hospitality. She went as so far, yeah, it is, and she went as so far to get a pineapple tattoo on her left foot. I think it's not a permanent, it's just a temp tattoo. And when we ordered pizza one time, she insisted pineapples were on it because she likes pineapples. Not because she likes the flavor of pineapples, but she's emotionally connected to pineapples being her major and who she is as a person. So I don't know, but definitely I could say my girlfriend is definitely obsessed with it to a degree that kind of annoys me, but I just have to deal with it.
So when you had pineapples on pizza, though, what did you like the way that it tasted, or
it was very sweet, and I'm neutral to it really. I just think it's
neutral. Oh my gosh!
I like anchovies. I like anchovies on pizza because it's very, very salty and it gives me a rush. But pineapples on pizza, it makes it really sweet, and so it's flavor. You know, it's a lot of sweetness to it.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna one of the Hapas are gonna get pissed at me for saying this, but I just can't see pineapple on pizza, and
no,
it's just fruit in general. I just can't, you know, like apple or avocado. It's like meat and onions on a pizza is great. Like if you like Canadian bacon, Italian sausage, even chicken on a pizza is just delicious. But like when it comes to like pineapple, it's like, oh no, I can't do that.
We have a maybe and a no. How dare you guys?
No, it's more like my dad hates anchovies on pizza because he doesn't like fish, but I like anchovies on pizza because it makes it, I guess, exotic. And so people who like pineapples on pizza want like something that's really sweet. And so again, I'm just neutral to it. So
it goes so well with the meat, though. Never
so from
mind,
what I remember, Ian Miles Chong said yes, and Cass Jackson said yes.
Yeah, but Roaming Millennial, you guys are in the same group as Roaming Millennial because she said no. How dare you?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like to me that it's turning out most
Mostly no.
half Asian people are against pineapple on pizza, which is ironic because Hawaii is supposed to be the Hapa ethno state, and Hawaiian pizza has pineapple on pizza. Come on, guys.
I've tried it once. It just doesn't taste good. I don't know. I just like the only thing that, in my opinion, that I like that's sweet on a pizza is barbecue pizza, like barbecue chicken pizza.
That
so
sounds
it's yeah.
Well,
I guess
that's a good way to end it then.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for being on. Everybody go check out the Lost Eurasians channel. We'll have the links in the description box below.
Yeah, we were on their channel once.
Yep. It was a really good discussion. I remember last time because we had a little bit of a debate, but we agreed on a lot of stuff too.
Yeah, it was fun. Good times.
Yeah, but thanks for having us on, man. Or it was a pleasure being on.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night, everyone.
all right, good night, guys. Toodles.
Bye.
Bye.
The cake is a lie.
No.